Teresa, it's really, for me, it's really exciting to have this opportunity to be working with you and to be working towards this masterclass for women and our group coaching for women in this topic of speak up, stand out, transform your voice. Really such a wonderful opportunity to step into your power, which is, I know, a topic that is near and dear to your heart. So it's really great today to be able to interview you and give the women who are listening a glimpse into who is Teresa Dukes. How did you get to where you are, and what is it that you bring to the women? So the first question, of course, is pretty straightforward, but I think it's very interesting. Can you share a bit about your background and what inspired you to become a leadership and professional speaking coach, a communication coach, all the things that you do so well? How did you get here?
Oh, Patty, God, that's such a big question. That's a big question, isn't it? Because depends on how far back I want to go. And I think, know, I could go all the way back to my childhood and everything that I went through there, or I could start with, when I got married and how things changed at that point, or I could go into my corporate background and explain how I managed to buck the trend basically and get myself to where I am today. But they all are interlinked. It's quite interesting. When we are a child, we learn from those around us, and that's normally our parents, our mother and our father, and our grandparents and aunts and uncles. And if you are in a very nurturing environment, then you will turn out in a totally different way. I wasn't. And I was one of four girls in my family, and my mother swears I came out laughing. Out of all four of the girls that she said she had, I was the happiest. I was always the happiest. But I think part of that came down to the fact that the household was very sad. There was not a lot of love going on in that house. There wasn't a lot of appreciation or recognition for when you did something good. So I just figured, well, I'm going to go out and have fun and I'm going to enjoy life. And that's what I did. And me and my sister, we used to get into a lot of trouble. Oh my God. Because we were looking for people to see us. And that, boom, big alarm bells come on. When you're sitting there thinking you want people to see you, that means that you feel invisible. And I did. As a child, I felt very invisible. And until I got into my, young adulthood, and I did everything that you're supposed to do. You find the man, you get married, you buy a house, you have children, you have this fairy tale. And I really did believe I had a fairy tale until the bubble burst. And, for me, it burst a lot further into the relationship than I thought it would. I thought maybe if it was going to burst, it would have burst earlier, but it didn't. I kept following what I was told as a little girl. Just do what you need to do to keep everybody happy. Make sure that you're ticking the boxes. You're providing a well-kept house for the family. You're looking after your husband's needs. You're taking care of the children, and you're doing a full-time job at the same time. And I think during that point, I realized that there's only so much you can do as an individual to keep things ticking over if you don't have the support of the person that is supposed to be your lifetime partner. And that particular hurdle I had to jump over was when I realized, after 23 years of marriage, that the marriage was a farce. And it was a farce because of the journey he took me down, that I allowed him to take me down. And by following his path, I lost my voice. And that's what inspires me today, is to encourage people to never let your voice be silenced. Our voices are so powerful, and they need to be heard, regardless of where we are, whether we're, with the moms in the child group, or we're having a meeting with our peers at work, or we're trying for promotion. in the corporate world, going from, you know, a particular level to a higher level. Our voices matter, and we have to be strong in the way in which we portray ourselves by going through self-assessment. And man, Patty, did I go through some self-assessment when I made the decision to ask my ex to leave. And that self-assessment helped me reconnect with Teresa, the individual, compared to Teresa, who was the mother, the wife, the taxi driver, the childminder. So, you know, and I think a lot of women out there can relate to that. But that step that I took to jump out of that really abusive and not a very good marriage at all was probably the hardest step I ever took. And that's why it would have been easy to stay, is what I'm saying. And a lot of people stay because it's easier to stay than it is to try to think about what do you have to do to tear apart this fabric that you have woven together. And so, you know, for me, taking that really hard step was the hardest, but it was the most powerful one as well. And I believe every woman should step into their power, regardless of how they feel about what's going on in their personal life or their corporate life. It's still important to own who you are and see who you are, because without you, there is no we. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, that's really such an important story, I think, for so many women to hear, because for so many of us, it's a journey. It's the destination doesn't really matter, as we know. It's the journey, and it's the journey from invisible and not being heard to becoming visible by finding your voice. And you're absolutely right. Our voices matter. And that's something that I think both of us really love to drive home to our women clients is, no, but your voice matters. I think that's a story of bravery. And, you know, the thing is too, I have nothing against, of course, education, but we can learn leadership skills from a textbook. But it's my experience that the ones that really ring true are the ones that we go through ourselves as we lead ourselves. Because, you know, we've had the conversation before, leadership's an inside job. And if you can't lead from within, and if you can't lead yourself, and you can't really lead. And so I think that your story, from a little girl to a woman in that relationship, so many of us can relate to that, to where you are today. It's duplicatable. Do you know what I mean? If you can do it, so can I, so can they. And I think that's really important today in the work that we want to do with women, because we want women to rise above, you know, their thinking system there. Yeah, go ahead. What were you saying?
No, I'm agreeing, which is like, yeah, everything. The self-assessment is something that I think a lot of people push to the side, though. And if we are going to really uncover our true selves and our natural identity, we really do have to go inside and try and understand ourselves again. And that's why I love the program that you do, where it's recognizing I am beautiful, I am true, I am good. Those particular free-flowing thoughts and writing them down on a daily or weekly or monthly basis absolutely helps you get to the crux of who you know you are, and who you will then own who you are. I love that exercise.
Self-reflection is so important. And you have been an international leader. I mean, you were an international director for the global organization Toastmasters International, an organization that's in about 145 countries. So I know that to take on a leadership position that's that big, you have to know who you are. And that comes from self-reflection. And I think you're right, that self-reflection is something that we don't really want to do. And yet when we do it, when we do that deep dive, we discover, yes, I am beautiful. Yes, I am strong. Yes, I am capable. I am. Indeed, I am. And I think that you're a really excellent example of that because of where you came from to, I mean, I think of it sitting at the global table of perhaps the largest public speaking and leadership organization in the world. And there you were, from where you start out through that marriage to who you are today. Teresa, I hope that you celebrate this. I hope that you're really proud of yourself for this. But I also just really want you to take away that what a fine example you are for the women that you work with. I want to move on to the next question, if you don't mind. Why do you think that it's crucial for women today to step into leadership roles? And what strengths, this is a two-pronged question, what strengths do you believe that women bring to leadership positions? So why is it important, and what is it that we women are bringing to these roles?
So I love that question. Why is it important to step into leadership roles? And then what are the strengths we bring? Both of those questions are fabulous. And you know, it just takes me back to representation. You know, we as women want to be able to see people like us in positions that we would like to be in. And I can remember when I was within the lower hierarchy of Toastmasters International, and it was at a district level, there had not been very many women going for the top level of leadership roles in our district. And I'm going, why? And it was because they weren't seeing women before them. And I can remember only remembering there being two other women ahead of me that were way ahead of me. So the individuals that were trying to run for these positions, they weren't seeing themselves up there on that top tier. And if you don't see yourself up there, then why are you going to reach for it? Well, it's unreachable then. If I'm not seeing somebody that looks like me up there, then there's no way I'm ever going to make it, right? So we need to step into those leadership roles as an individual, as a woman, especially, to set the stage for those that are to follow. I sit and I think about, you know, the Disney, all the movies that are made by Disney, and the fact that for its entire history, all of the female leads were always white. And until recently have they changed them to include a different ethnicity. The real beauty and the goal that we as women need to embrace is the fact that the more people who see us in those higher positions or up on that stage or representing women at different organizations, the more the women coming up after us, the generation behind us and even behind them, will then know that it's reachable. And as a little girl, I always had dreams. I dreamed of traveling, and I never saw anybody of my grounding that ever traveled. And I thought, well, I'm going to set the example, and I'm going to travel. And I did. And at 16, I think, was the first time I actually took a trip. And I wound up on a high school trip to Madrid and to Paris and to Amsterdam. It was the most amazing trip, but it was a dream that I never thought I would accomplish, and I've not stopped since. But what about the strengths? What are the strengths that women bring? That's your second question. And this goes back to our self-reflection. If we do not identify what we do well, what we are really good at, and what other people come to us for because they know we can make these things happen, then we're hiding our light under a bushel. So we have to go and identify those strengths. And I knew at an early age that I like talking. I love to speak. I love to dance and to sing and to be in front of people. But the older I got, the less that dream became, because when we get older, we go through peer pressure, and you know, you're just the poor little girl from the wrong side of the tracks. You don't need to be saying anything, that kind of thing. And that put me even into a more silent position of my inner self. So I started, and I encourage other women as well to start writing down things that you do well, keeping a list of all of those accomplishments you've gone through, even from, the minute that you were a teenager and you took that first step to go into womanhood, and how good that felt to, go out on that first date, let's say, or to actually say no to that person that you did not want to go out with because you knew they weren't the right person for you. It's having the strength to say yes and no to the situations or opportunities that are presented to you. So our strengths are our power, and if we don't own them, we won't go any further than where we are right now. And I always like to think about, like little trampolines. I got my grandsons a trampoline when they were my oldest one, when he was 1. He loved this trampoline. And the reason I bring a trampoline into it is because the minute you identify a first strength, you start jumping for joy. And I think about that trampoline jumping you higher and higher and higher. And so I always use that little analogy to think about, well, that was your first accomplishment. That was your first strength. So how high are you going to jump on your next one? So every time you accomplish something, start getting that imaginary trampoline out and see how high you can fly, because it's amazing.
So many studies show that when we have women in companies, especially in leadership positions, it's like really good for the bottom line. Profits go up. There tends to be more harmony in the workplace. There's more diversity, more inclusivity. Why is it, do you think, that occurs when you have we women moving on up? Because this is, we're trying so hard these days to get up that so-called corporate ladder, or even as an entrepreneur. So why is it, do you think, what is the secret sauce that women bring that actually increases? There's countless studies that show that, if nothing else, listen up, men, when you bring in women into your company and give them a position where they're allowed to springboard or trampoline up high, your bottom line is going to increase. Why do you think that is?
And I've thought about this for a long time as well. And I sit there and I think about the differences between the male and the female intellectually. And, there is a male side to our brain and there's a female side to our brain. But so it's a difficult thing to kind of separate it and go, well, men are strong and women are weak, or men are very intelligent and, targeted towards their goals, and women are little steps. But, in reality, I believe that when you bring a woman into a position of power, of authority, and they understand what is required of them to take that position on, they bring with them all of the things that a woman brings. And there is no denying that a woman is a nurturer. The majority of women are nurturers. They want to take care of people. They want to make sure everybody's okay. They look at that bigger picture from all angles, and not just from that profit angle. It's like, if this person is happy in their job, then they're going to be more productive. And if they're more productive, then that does affect the bottom line of the company. And that goes for everybody that works with that individual. But it's also about emotional intelligence. And sometimes we forget how important emotional intelligence can be. Some people see emotional intelligence as a weakness, but in reality, it's probably the strongest thing that you can have in business, whether you're male or female. But when I think about where I was in that corporate world, when I was promoted, because I started out as an executive secretary, and I knew if I was going to be able to make some of those changes I talked about earlier, I needed to get promotion. And it was changing the perceptions of the people around me, the leaders that were all men at the time, for them to realize, yes, she can do this job. And it was putting part of my male brain into action, and combining it with my female brain to make sure that they didn't take me for granted. They didn't just see what they had seen in the past, and that I am a force to be reckoned with. I am a woman of worth, and therefore you need to see me for who I am. And that's what I think a lot of women in those positions bring. They bring their worth. And they will have done a lot of work to find that worth in order to make a difference in the companies.
Yeah, very true. And you remind me years ago when I was studying Chinese philosophy and Chinese medicine, and you're right, the yin and the yang, right? And the yang is the male and male energy, not just a male as in human being. But the fact is that they are more logical. They think more one step, then the next, very linearly. Whereas we are the yang, the yin rather, sorry, and we are that darker, intuitive. But the thing is that you made me think of is that we see the whole picture. And we need both. We need the linear. First, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that, and then we're going to do that. I envy, in a way, men that, because I've had to learn that skill. It didn't come to me all that naturally. But I remember my mom, and most moms, this is why we make good leaders. If you've been a mom, you don't have to be a mom, of course, as a woman, but if you have been a mom, I remember my mom. Mom, where's that blue sweatshirt? It's on the third step going upstairs on the landing. If I asked my dad that, he'd say, how the hell am I supposed to know? I don't know, where'd you leave it? But my mom, as most moms, could remember that the navy blue t-shirt's on the third step, and this is over there. And don't forget this, because women do tend to see the whole picture. And that's what I think you're saying. And it's not that one is better than the other, because you can't have one without the other. That's how the world works. But I think you're right on the spot there by realizing that it's what we bring is just this different way. And I think that's why we're more inclusive.
Yeah.
And that's why we give in more to diversity, because I know there are men who raise children, but let's face it, globally speaking, it's still the moms, even the moms that are working 40 hours a week, they're still putting the blue t-shirt on the third step going upstairs, and they remember where it is. I never, and I was like that when I was a mom, but I only had one child. My mom had 4. So, but it's an amazing ability that women have that I think is really important. I want to ask you now, we've got this really wonderful program, our Speak Up, Stand Out, Transform Your Voice program. And it really is a class on how to step into your power. And I've heard you speak, and I know you, and I know that stepping into your power is really an important part of your own journey. And it's a really important ingredient in the work that you do with men as well. But we are, as you know, we are basically focused on women here, just because of the old saying, when you educate a man, you educate one person, but when you educate a woman, you educate the whole village. And you and I have talked about this a lot. We need the women speaking because of the way we think and what we bring to the table. But can you tell us from your point of view about the inspiration behind the Speak Up, Stand Out, Transform Your program? And what do you think our participants are going to gain from this wonderful program?
Oh my gosh, I know. What inspired me to work on Step Into Your Power? It probably originated through the journey I took to be elected to the board of directors within Toastmasters International. And I was watching all the other candidates that were running and how they were operating and the type of words they were using, and actually was watching some of the masks they were putting on. Because that's, if you're going to get elected, you got to be personable, you got to be likable, and so they were doing whatever they thought they needed to do to be that chosen one. And for me, the first time I ran, that is probably exactly what I did, because I thought, well, this is a tick box exercise. I've gone from here. Now it's the next step. And in reality, until you recognize who you are and what power you are bringing to the party, it's going to be a difficult position to step into. and to actually provide really important input to the things that are going on that board. So the second time that I ran, and you know this because you and I worked together, and that was when I realized, hey, my voice was not where it needed to be. I had completely lost it. And so in order for me to re-enter the world as a person of substance and a person of worth, I needed to find that voice. And that meant that I needed to go back in my life and understand what drove me, what stopped me from, going forward, but also to recognize that people don't want to be talked at, they want to be spoken with. And that second time around, I started speaking with those electors, the people that were going to put me up there on that board of directors. And we were having conversations instead of, stock answers. And, that's what I try and encourage everybody that I work with today. You don't need a stock answer. You need a conversation explaining and showing your experience and what you've gone through and how that then impacts where you want to go in the future. So that's where the step into your power originated from. And it inspired me because once I started having conversations, then people started listening and they started remembering what I was saying. So if you really want to be heard and understood and remembered, you need to figure out how to step into your power. And that's why we want to do the Speak Up, Stand Out, Transform Your Voice program. Because that's a really big part of it, isn't it, Patty? Using our voices in a way that allows us to reach even more people, but on a personal level, and not on this really big, I'm the queen of the party kind of level, because none of us are going to be wearing a crown in everyday life. What we're going to be wearing is our heart on our sleeve so people can buy into the authenticity of who we are.
That's the word. You see, I was going to say, so what I'm hearing is that when you stepped into your power, you stepped into the real, honest to God, truthful Teresa Dukes. No masks, no anything, just heart and soul. And I love that. And, too, about finding the voice, because one of the definitions, I think, was Longfellow, who said that the human voice is the organ of the soul. And when we begin to use our voice, our speaking voice, as well as our point of view voice, our step into our power, our authentic self, we really do come from our soul, our heart and our soul, and we are relatable. And I think that that's really such an important message. And it's not something that you can go out there and buy. You already have it. We've talked about this so many times. Beware. Ooh, I get myself in trouble when I say this, but beware of people who say they can empower you. No, because this is an inside journey. It's like leadership. It comes from the inside. And I think that's really important what you just said, because all the external tools in the world, if they don't come from within you, you just don't become your true authentic self. I want one more question to ask you, because I know you love books and I love books. Of all the books written by women, for women, what is one book that you would say to our ladies listening today that you think, I know this is a tough question, that you think they ought to read? Because you and I have talked about, so many books, but what's one book that pops into your mind that you think our listeners could read and really, this is the information that I need. This is what's been missing. This is so interesting.
Oh, Patty, you are definitely putting me on the spot here, but I'm remembering the article that you wrote just today, and you gave us so many wonderful books to choose from. But one of the ones that really, really resonates with me, and you're going to have to help me with the author's name. It's The Bird Caged with it.
Oh, I know why the caged bird sings. Maya Angelou.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that book is so powerful, and it explains so many things that she went through. And I think that a lot of women go through something in parallel to what she experienced. Not to say that they experienced everything she went through, because her story is so unique and it is so powerful to read. But the fact that in order for her to find her voice, she needed to use it, because as we know in her story, she was mute for quite a number of years. And what her mom got her to do was to go and write poems. She was got really interested in poems, and so she went to somebody that was also a poem laureate, and wanted to share her poems with them. But this individual told her, your poems will not come alive until you speak them. And so, for me, we have to speak in order for our words to come alive. We can't sit there and think about it all the time. We actually need to do something. We have to take that step of action and allow our voices to be heard further and higher than maybe they have been heard in the past. So that has to be one of the books I would suggest anybody to read to start with, because you can dip in and out of it. You don't have to go all the way through from beginning to end, but have a read. It's powerful.
It really is. I even remember where I was when I read that book, and I read it a long time ago. It was a life changer. And of course, the caged bird sings for freedom. And that's what happens when we begin to speak from our hearts and our souls. Teresa, I think that the women listening to you today will really find many nuggets in what you're saying. Leadership, all of this stuff that you're talking about comes from that reflection of going within, finding yourself, becoming who you are. I don't even like to say finding yourself, because we're not really lost. We just bury ourselves and get all covered up with all this guck from living every day and from what people tell us, and you can't do that, and who do you think you are? But underneath that, in all of us, is this little seed that when we were kids, we had big dreams, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And then life just, and I think what you've done that is so remarkable is you've just peeled back all those layers and said, no, I don't accept what my husband thinks. I don't accept what they think of me. I accept only what is, I know since a little girl, what's inside me. And those big dreams that we had as little girls, it's time to bring those back and know we are the masters of our own destiny in many ways, so I think your story is universal. And it reminds me of one last thing I want to say. All of us go through struggles in life, and we can either become the victim of the struggles, or we can be the victor over the struggles. I think you will agree, and many of the best teachers that I know and love look at their struggles and say, those were the greatest gifts that I could have been given, because they rubbed me they kept rubbing me, and I was like a big chunk of coal, and now I've become this beautiful diamond. It's their gifts. So for our women who are going through struggles, be careful of your narrative, and remember to flip that narrative. Every day that I wake up and I'm alive, I'm like, okay, girl, let's go again. Because as I age, I realize that's not going to happen continually. So if you're, for forever and ever, there's a shelf life here. So for our women who are going through difficult marriages, illnesses, whatever it is, can either be devastating and destroy us, or can be the best teacher and can make us rise. Another Maya Angelou poem, and still I rise.
Yeah.
Final words.
I think, my final words to anybody that's listening is to start thinking about who you really are, who you were when you were a kid, who you are now, and what is the difference between it. And if you don't like where you are right now, you still have power to make a difference and to change. So start writing that list of accomplishments, of those achievements, of those strengths that you do own. And then let's start having a conversation about stepping into your power. Paddy.
Thank you so much. I've loved this interview too. Thank you so much.